These videos are taken from the Visions of Utopia movie. Oh yeah, here we are. There's two Visions of Utopia presentations, and I'll show just a few minutes from part one about established communities. Right? So the models I'm proposing are actually out there. This is Twin Oaks in the United States.
And this is how we're able to live middle class or upper middle class lifestyle with significantly less income. So we don't have one washing machine and one lawnmower for each person, but we share them across the whole group. So we have 17 cars that we share amongst 100 people, so we're getting by with about 40 cars less than the average group of Americans of that size. And we do that through a fairly complicated set of carpooling and ride sharing and these kinds of things.
And the amount of waste we have is very minor. We do one dump run a week, and we have 6 big barrels that we take to the dump. And so that's the waste of 100 people, including several businesses.
So there are lots of things that we do here internally that we could just purchase from the outside world. So we have our own dairy program, we make our own milk, our own cheese, we have our own meat, we make our own bread, our own granola, and it goes on beyond that to building our own buildings. All of the buildings that we have some kind of renewable energy source in them.
Our per capita income is vastly less than the contemporary American standard, which means that we live by Uncle Sam's standard in poverty, but we actually enjoy all the amenities of contemporary life. We have the internet, we have computers. You know, I have a whole fleet of cars and pickup trucks and minivans at my disposal, and I have people who go out and do my shopping for me and clean the kitchen for me.
One of the keys to the good life is having a flexible work schedule and having a pleasant work environment. If the day is beautiful outside, people can take the afternoon off and go for a walk in the woods. Everybody has 4 or 5 different types of work that they do or more. The work that they really enjoy.
We make lots of decisions that you wouldn't make if you were running the organization like a business. For example, we have a huge organic garden, and we love the produce that comes from it, and we put a lot of hours into it. But if we were running it like a business, we'd close the garden down and we'd put everybody into the income areas.
We make our money back.
Yeah, this is another society which perhaps goes along a highly evolved idea where, as they said, they generate very little waste and they don't require large incomes. Right? So in these collectives, and, you know, these are smack bang in the middle of one of the most industrial countries in the world, in the USA.
Which part of the USA are they?
I'm not quite sure. Twin Oaks. You can look it up. Yeah. Obviously, it's away from the big city, but there's very little waste, very little energy use, no need for big incomes, and they share their appliances and cars and so forth. Right? So it's a huge way to reduce our ecological footprint. Right, so I'll go on to the next one. This is the Brighton Bush community, also in the USA.
One of the challenges of living at Brighton Bush is simply 40 or 50 people coming from all different parts of the country, all socioeconomic strata, coming together to live in this very small, very remote, isolated place. And as you might expect, all kinds of conflicts are going to come up. Different upbringings, different personality conflicts are inevitable. The great thing about Brighton Bush is that we work on those conflicts. You need to work these things out.
We have...
Oh, that was it. Okay. Conflict resolution. and they take the effort to work on those conflicts, right? They're not left to fester. It might have also indicated that, yes, like I was saying before, there's a lot of work to be done. And I think the next one also will show us that and provide reasons why. So this one's from the Nyland Co-housing group.
It's really a wonderful experience being able to share with people of all ages and also all very diverse interests and backgrounds. And for me, who has no grandchildren, it's wonderful to feel like I'm sort of the grandma of the neighborhood, and that's great fun.
I don't have children myself, but I have a lot of kid interactions that I really love, so I probably have the best of both worlds.
The upside is there's that many more adults who have contact with my kids. So there's that extended family quality, but of course you're still negotiating the norms of parenting and the norms of the child community.
This community is a very safe place for children. The cars are parked on the side of the community, and the kids are safe to bicycle ride and play with friends on the pedestrian ways between the houses.
My 93-year-old father is going to move in the first of the year. He's very gregarious and loves to talk to people, so I anticipate that it's going to be a wonderful experience for him.
What we do here in Nyland on a personal level is something that can model a process that has to happen on a larger social, political, global level. There's this tremendous potential to change the world. I mean, literally, simply, one neighborhood at a time. And it's people sitting down, getting to know their neighbors, taking responsibility for their actions, and learning from each other.
I know these people so well that I trust them, and I would trust them with anything, and they'll help me out no matter what I need or what they need.
We are a community, and we have developed a certain amount of cohesiveness that makes it a safe place for me to continue to explore who I am and how to be the best person that I can be in terms of what I give not only to the community but in other parts of my life.
There was a hope that co-housing communities would make our lives simpler. And I have to admit at this point, it doesn't make our lives simpler. It makes them richer. Sometimes it makes them more difficult. Sometimes it makes them more complicated. But overall, from everyone that I have spoken to, the disadvantages are far outweighed by the closer connections with the people you live with.
As you've just seen, today's intentional communities are melting pots of ideals and issues that have been in the public spotlight over many decades, including civil rights, women's liberation, peace activism, sustainable agriculture, alternative energy, and now health and aging. Most of these groups focus on several of the areas, and each community creates a blend unique to its own identity. In fact, in all of my travels, I have yet to find two communities that are identical. Being noticeably different from most of their neighbors, intentional communities are often thought to operate on the fringes of mainstream culture. However, the everyday values and priorities of community folks and mainstream folks are surprisingly similar, such as providing a stable home and good education for children, finding meaningful and satisfying work, living in a safe neighborhood, enjoying a pollution-free environment, and for many, pursuing the spiritual path that provides a context for the other goals and a basis for making decisions in times of uncertainty. The big difference is that people drawn to intentional communities are not satisfied with the status quo and want to improve on what past generations have accomplished. Their members are out there every day, rolling up their sleeves and exploring new possibilities. Intentional communities are essentially testing grounds for new ideas about how to live better, more satisfying lives, lives that actualize our untapped human potential in a way that's environmentally and socially sustainable. And one final caution. History is full of examples of starry-eyed dreamers who have attempted to live in community only to discover that the reality is challenging, hard work. Many have retreated from the idea, convinced that it's naively idealistic and unworkable. However, for those who can see the bigger picture, that community living will always push us to
there were some very powerful confirmations from watching that video of some of the concepts that we studied 10 years previously in the conversations material, like the elders saying, well, I don't have any children, but I got kids are all around me, and it's wonderful. And it's a two-way thing. The kids think it's wonderful too. And it was stated that they live in a safe environment. And we could say in our own city, we don't have that. We don't have a safe environment, even in marvellous Melbourne. The other confirmations, once again, it came up that if there's hard work to be done, like the guy said, he thought it was going to make his life simpler, and instead it makes it richer. Not more complicated, just richer. The interactions are far more pervasive, and which lives to a richer existence. So that was powerful just from that point of view. Yeah. I've got through most of the ordinary stuff. Let's just check where we've gone. Are new blueprints required? What's up with the status quo? Well, this will answer that question. In many of our presentations at Magpie House, we came across these concepts that economics makes us poor, medicine makes us sick, free trade makes us slaves. Right? Even though they sound like contradictions, I think we can intuit there's some truth in that. Right? And I came across a David Icke, an expansion of that, where lawyers destroy justice, universities destroy knowledge, governments destroy freedom, media destroys information, religion destroys spirituality, schools destroy education, paranoia is patriotic. The one I've got missing is doctors destroy health, because it's about wealth and not health. And so what I put on the bottom there is, again, come from the conversations material. But the problem with humanity is not economic, political, technological, military or religious, but spiritual. Right? We showed a number of videos of very diverse societies, some technological, some not, and each one was valid. Right? If you try and have just an economic solution, we know that a lot of economic stuff that's going on in the world is not necessarily good for us, and not necessarily good for the forest and indigenous peoples who have been displaced. If you look at political solutions, well, there's too much of an element of self-gain there to be viable. If we look at purely technological solutions, we already touched on that. And if you give a child matches, what can they do with that? You know, we've got the potential to destroy all life on this planet many times over with the nuclear warheads we install them on this planet. Military solutions? Would anybody like a military solution? Now, religious solution. Religions do have a way of binding people together. And there's elements of truth in a lot of what they share. By having a common belief, it does bind the community together. but it's not open-minded enough from my point of view. It's too closed-minded, because what if somebody's got different beliefs, right? Or perhaps that community will accept those different beliefs, but perhaps it won't. There's a big difference between religious... You all here? Welcome back. I've got a fair bit of text there, which in some ways I've already covered. The divine purpose of humans, my interpretation of the ringing cedars, is to enhance life by multiplying biodiversity into vast areas of marginal lands, turning deserts into oases, perhaps, rather than disturbed areas of rich wilderness. People may say that humans should not disturb nature, but we're actually given the intelligence to disturb nature in a positive way, rather than the negative way of monoculture and factory chemical farming. There's a couple of examples of disturbing or enhancing nature, and this is the drainage of coastal swamps for housing estates. When we were living in Byron Bay, between Byron and Tweed Heads, they were draining the swamps for housing estates, and the housing estates were very expensive, and they were built on the swamps and devastating the wildlife. That doesn't make sense to me. In fact, we lived in a house in Byron Bay which was a reclaimed swamp, and the mosquitoes were terrible. So not appropriate, you know, just because people wanted to live close to the beach. Another example is in Melbourne's Dandenong Ranges. Because a century ago they tried to farm the Dandenong Ranges, dividing it up into 10-acre lots, right? And what they found was nature was just far too powerful for that. And even though the soil was volcanic and very rich, eventually they gave up, right? So that was another inappropriate way. You know, the Dandenongs is a magnificent area of wilderness and flora. And at one stage, I think they chopped down almost every tree.
Except for one.
Except at One Tree Hill?
One. They called it One Tree Hill.
Yeah. Yeah. So wilderness is for wild animals, whereas true biped humans walk out of the forest with higher cognition. But unfortunately, humans are attracted and disturb coastal areas or tropical temperate wilderness, when in fact there are vast areas of marginal lands available. So when we went looking for land, we went away from the coastal regions. We wanted elevation, and that was before we discovered ringing cedars, by the way. We discovered the ringing cedars 6 months later, and we thought, what a great model. Okay. And this is a recent news item that the floodgates have been opened for coastal sprawl. So it goes on. Rezoning seaside farmland for housing at Phillip Island. Phillip Island, do they really want us to turn that into a housing estate?
It's being stopped.
Sorry, it's being stopped? Cool. Okay. But they'll keep trying. Who's heard of COA? Authentic Freedom. Yeah, very powerful stuff about a... he's American, but he lives in Australia now. I've sold a number of his videos. If anybody's interested, ask me about them. He's got a very powerful philosophy. For example, when something's not sustainable, we know it's going to end. We live in an unsustainable world, and just from that statement alone, we know it's going to end. That system is going to end. Last time the economy collapsed, 90% of the people lived in the bush, and they had bush tucker knowledge. But now we have 10%, and those people don't know the wild foods. They don't have gardens, and they don't have food stores. From another teacher, metaphysical teacher, he says that we're actually in our most vulnerable time now because we've moved away from the good earth, and that humans always used to store food, and they don't do that anymore. And again from Koa, we need to rebirth the tribe, otherwise humanity will not survive. I do insane things, but things I wouldn't do if I had a loving tribe around me. So again, that backs up the tribal collective idea. And another movie that we showed at Magpie House for the next 7 generations. Now 13 grandmothers from the indigenous world. Some of them actually knew since they were children that they were going to come together to bring a message to the world. A very powerful movie. Okay, so now